Radio London.
But first, let's continue the conversation, shall we? Talking about PSBs, public service broadcasters. So that's the BBC, ITV, STV, Channel 4, S4C and Channel 5. They're all classed as public service broadcasters. But a new report by Ofcom has shown that children spend more time watching YouTube than all of these services combined. So what does that mean for the future of UK broadcasters? I'm joined still in the studio now with our resident technology expert, James Erskine, who is director of Rocket. You can get more details on wearerocket.co.uk. You can find him on X and Blue Sky under his name, James Erskine. James, you know this, but I'm going to remind some of our listeners who may not, because, you know, when we talk about the value that public service broadcasters have, on the one hand, we're saying YouTube is just surpassing everything. People might be tuned into Radio London thinking, well, what's the point of it all? But there are so many shows that have done so well that have been exported, haven't they?
Completely. So the public service broadcasters are kind of the bedrock, and they are traditional media.
Right.
What lots of people can say nowadays is they'll roll their eyes and they'll say the mainstream media doesn't connect with me.
Okay.
But what's important to remember is YouTube is not a media owner. They're not making anything. They're only a platform. So when you create something, particularly when you're a public service broadcaster, it's really important that it gets seen, whether it's paid for by advertisers or by the licence fee in the case of the BBC. And what's important to remember with this Ofcom study is really they're not asking for anything new.
Yeah.
What they're saying is when you go onto, sorry to mention brand name, but your Sky programming guide,
sure,
some channels are given a priority on that programming guide. All Ofcom are suggesting is that programming from these public service broadcasters is prioritised. It's given more of a prominent way so audiences can connect with it.
Got it. Because as you say, they're urging YouTube to boost the visibility of UK public service media. And they're saying that needs to be done to protect the future of it.
Yes.
They warn the system is now under serious threat,
yes,
highlighting the financial and audience challenges, with only about 20% of YouTube content viewed in the UK is actually made in the UK.
Yeah.
But the other side of that coin, let's unpack that. If we look at some fantastic British exports, you've got Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Love Island, Great British Bake Off, Downton Abbey, the Got Talent franchise, Come Dine With Me, Doctor Who. These have all been made here in the UK by public service broadcasters, and then they've been sold to other parts of the world, including the show that I first featured on 16 years ago, The Family on Channel 4, which was then sold and bought by an array of different media companies. I remember getting messages from people in South Africa, in Cape Town, in Australia, in Dubai, as they were watching The Family.
Completely. Now, it's interesting to laser focus on Doctor Who for a second, because it's the best example and it's the worst example.
Okay, here we go.
Doctor Who, they wanted to ensure that it got viewers from around the world. So BBC Studios has entered into a partnership with Disney to ensure that it looks better, it feels more premium, and it gets a platform all the way around the world.
Okay.
So right now for Doctor Who, it's a co-partnership between BBC Studios and Disney, which is great because it's British, it's originated, it's still filmed in Wales. The issue that means is when it's shown around the world, it's Disney that gets the benefit, not BBC Studios.
I see.
So often with these streaming partners, you'll find that Netflix is putting money into British production companies.
Yeah.
But sometimes the British production companies around the world don't get a benefit of the upside.
I see.
The upside goes with Netflix. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's different.
I mean,
but you're right to point out there are huge successes that come from the public service broadcasters, but it's harder and harder to monetize that IP, that intellectual property.
So then what do we do? And we have, you know, and this is a real concern, I think, for many who are passionate about whichever particular broadcaster that they watch or view. But when you have Ofcom pretty much saying the system is now under serious threat, and looking at the financial and audience challenges, they're saying YouTube needs to boost the visibility of these public service media. What should we, the consumers, we, the individuals who watch all of this content, day after day, hour after hour, what should we be thinking about, or in fact even investing in? Because of course, even with YouTube, you can pay for YouTube and have it ad-free.
Yeah, it's incredible that, isn't it? Basically, for roughly the same amount as your Netflix subscription, some people pay just to remove the adverts and to download the content from YouTube. It's an incredible price point when you compare the two. What should we be doing as consumers? I say this a lot, but know what you're watching. So right now, any news story can be covered by any number of different news organisations and any group of individuals. So YouTube has democratised any bit of coverage. Anybody with a camera can go to what's going on in Epping, can go to Switzerland to film the reaction of the Lionesses. When it has a rubber stamp on it, that could be Channel 4, that could be the BBC, that could be a newspaper, then I think what you're doing is you're investing in a quality stamp, some kind of rubber stamp that says this has been checked. This could be subject to Ofcom, whereas individuals, content on YouTube is not regulated in the same way. So first of all, as consumers, we have to have an understanding of what we're watching. I always say to my kids, when I say, where did you hear about that? They'll say YouTube or TikTok. I say, no, not good enough.
Okay.
Where did you hear about that? What was the source? So that's the first thing. The second thing is getting an understanding of how that different piece of content works in the media mix. I always say to my kids, even though YouTubers have to be very out and proud about when it's a partnership, whether it's a sponsorship, how do you think that's been paid for? So I would often ask that. And then the third thing is have an understanding of what quality content is. So look, I think there's a place for silly TikTok memes. I think there's a place for politically charged, opinionated content.
Right.
But I also think there's a really important place for balanced, regulated content, and only PSBs can do that.
There we go. You've hit the nail on the head, because that was my next question, really, James, is some of our listeners will be thinking, what is the point of public service broadcasters when you have this situation now where it's being surpassed by, this giant that is YouTube? And we've even got to this particular point where our own media regulator is outlining just how things are broken.
Yes, completely. And they've said if something does not change. Now, I actually think their proposals about prioritising content from regulated broadcasters aren't that revolutionary. As I say, it already happens on the Sky programming guide, on the Freeview programming guide. So it already happens. BBC One's at the top, then ITV's number 3. So that doesn't have to happen. That happens because of Ofcom and them saying to Sky, you've got to keep them in that order.
Okay.
So that gives a certain kind of natural selection, and that natural selection should be able to work in the online space.
Got it.
I also think a bigger, wider public consciousness around what makes quality content.
Yeah.
So, like I say, I don't mind seeing people with a political opinion broadcasting. I don't mind engaging in long-form content that isn't necessarily regulated, but I do think there has to be a space for both.
And just finally, because I know this can sound a bit of an odd one, but I remember a number of years ago when YouTube created YouTube Originals. Yeah. I remember they created Karate Kid, which then was bought, if I'm right, by Netflix. And then obviously, the kind of repurposed TV show, and it's done so well now with the film as well. But what is the difference between streaming platforms versus YouTube? Because YouTube doesn't do originals anymore.
YouTube does not do originals. It is purely a platform for other people's content, and that is how they want to take it. A big part of what YouTube offers to rights holders, broadcasters, people that create content is the ability to understand the audience that they're reaching with the Google Analytics that powers YouTube.
Okay.
So they're very much in the platform game, in the distribution game. It's funny, the whole kind of streaming wars took off because in America, cable television became quite expensive and people were cutting the cord. That's what they said. Okay. So they cut the cord and they went over the top of the cord with these streaming services. Funnily enough, we're about to reach saturation of the number of different subscriptions anybody has.
Okay.
I mean, you look at Disney, Netflix, Amazon Prime, there's HBO, there's Paramount, there's Discovery, and then outside of that, there's YouTube, there's Spotify. So soon we're going to be reaching a saturation point of the number of different services that we have to subscribe to.
Yeah.
So it's almost going to go full circle again, where you're going to look for a bundling up of different services. So you'll find different mobile companies are now offering free Netflix subscriptions. I think the future will be some kind of rationalization. All of these streaming platforms won't last for long.
Okay.
It's interesting. Netflix, whilst it's hugely profitable and hugely successful now, it is not growing. Not many new people are taking up Netflix subscriptions.
What do you see the future of public service broadcasters to be, finally?
I think it's disappointing, but I think it will mean more of a focus on current affairs and news programming. If you look at how the BBC was founded by Lord Reith around education, to educate, inform and entertain, I still think when you get a really powerful storyline in EastEnders that has a public service message, that's just as valuable as when it's on the news at 10. But I think we're going to see a decline in that more mainstream stuff and a focus on factual content.
James, it's always a pleasure to see you here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on Radio London. You can share your thoughts on this, 0800 731 2000. If you'd like more details for James Erskine, head to wearerocket.co.uk and also find him on social media, James Erskine.